Okay, so today we're going to be talking about some uses of MIDI, and it says advanced MIDI. It's actually not advanced yet. We are going to get to the advanced part pretty soon. But at this point, we are going to discuss, some practical uses of MIDI. And as you know, we need the kind of a controller to have to get the MIDI messages inside the software or the sequencer, whatever it is that we are using. And the most common one obviously is the MIDI keyboard. Everybody has seen one of those. This is a very simple example of a MIDI keyboard. There are more complex ones, but the interesting thing about this is that this device has no sounds whatsoever, has only the keys and some controls that send MIDI messages. You can see in the back that it has USB and MIDI ports, so we can connect this to a computer, to a MIDI sequencer, to anything that is MIDI compatible, and we can get the MIDI messages out of this device into the next one, which is again the computer or MIDI sequencer. But we have other types of controllers as well, and this is one example. This is a very simple MIDI guitar. The MIDI guitar, there are several types of MIDI guitars. This is a very interesting one because it has no strings. It looks like it has strings, but it doesn't. Just on the right hand, there are some strings in there, but on the left hand, you press the places where you put your finger is like a little keys, and so it's a very interesting instrument. It's used a lot, for games, stuff like that, but it can be used for MIDI sequencing. Pretty much any instrument that we can possibly imagine, there is a version of MIDI instrument. For example, this is a MIDI wind instrument, which is more or less like a clarinet. And so we can have, anything like this, or drums, or violins and cellos, pretty much any kind of instrument. There is a version, there is a MIDI version. Okay. Then we have other devices that are very interesting as well, such as the one that you see in this picture there. This is a Yamaha Tenorion, and you can touch this little screen there and create a bunch of things. This is very open. You can program this device to actually create those sounds, and you can use this to do some live music. And some people have gotten kind of crazy as well, such as this next two examples, which is this is a MIDI ladder, and this is one of those crazy guys that do the electronic music that some of you have seen me doing. Is a very interesting example that when you step or on the ladder, on the steps, you can create different sounds depending on the way you program. Some other guys are those in Cornell. This is a MIDI instrument that is an experiment that uses hamsters. Isn't that interesting? Cool, huh? They can walk around and create some MIDI messages that are translated into music. So that's their own idea. And so on. There is a bunch of other things that we can do in terms of MIDI. This is just a few examples. But what's the next step? Well, we're going to be using some softwares, right, to do the sequencing. In the past, we used to have, the first ones were MIDI sequencers. They were real devices, units. And then we started using software. So there are many types of software that are dedicated to MIDI. And nowadays, there are many that are MIDI and audio, and even more, MIDI, audio, and video, all in the same software. But we are going to discuss this in more detail later. This is an example of a MIDI sequencer. This is Propellerhead Reason, one of my favorite MIDI programs there are nowadays. And as you can see on the top, this is a very small image, of course, but so many of you already know this particular device, I mean this particular software. And you see on the top, you have those, there's a little mixing board in there that you can mix the sounds. And then you have the units in the middle, which are devices that have drum sounds and any other kinds of sounds. And in the bottom, you have the sequencer, where we have tracks and you can record MIDI stuff, not audio. This is MIDI stuff. And we also have some plugins. The plugins, we have several types. And this is good for you too, because you're going to use this information in some of the other courses here, which are the types of plugins. We are going to discuss this also in other courses in more detail. But just for you have an idea, there are several types of plugins. You know, the first one actually that was developed was the VST, the Virtual Studio technology by Steinberg. And that's the first one that you know, the first company that developed this software that is little plugins. There are units that can do signal processing, and in this particular case they were discussing virtual instruments, which are devices that have instrument. Then we have also audio units, which is a very simple one developed by Apple. And we have the ones by Avid, which are used in Pro Tools, which used to be Real-Time Audio Suite, or RTS, as they were called in the past, and TDM, and now in version 10 they are called Native and DSP. You know, that those are the new names, but it's exactly the same concept. You know, Native and DSP. And there's also one, as an example there is the DirectX that was developed by Microsoft, and of course that only works in Windows computers. So virtual instruments are, as I said, little pieces of software that work inside another program. For example, we're going to look at Pro Tools, and Pro Tools you can load a little virtual instrument that has sounds, and you can do MIDI programming. So there are two types of virtual instruments: the samplers and the synthesizers. The samplers use digital samples, or real recordings of the acoustic instruments, and we use those samples to, when you have a MIDI note, you trigger one of those samples. The synthesizers are actually like the analog ones, from the 60s and 70s, but they are of course digital, but we create from scratch. We have oscillators and other devices and filters, and we create new sounds. So this is a screenshot of a virtual instrument called Expand 2 in a Pro Tools session. We're going to look into that pretty soon. And the other way of doing this is by using a technology called Rewire, which is this. You can use a software, which is Pro Tools, and another software, standalone software, such as Reason, and have them both working together in Rewire. So Rewire is a technology that allows the two programs to run in the same computer, and they communicate, transferring MIDI and audio in both directions. So you can actually have MIDI going back and forth and have audio going back and forth. Okay, well, not back and forth in this case, because audio only goes from Reason to Pro Tools, because there's no way to put audio back in Reason. But in any case, that's the concept, that you can go back and forth with MIDI and audio and run the two programs at the same time and synchronize them, the tempo as well. Okay, so let's look at a couple examples soon, and I'll see you.